This book is about a Bow Street runner he has kind of unintentionally strung this young woman along named Allison. She's a part of the Ton. She's in love with him, and they already had this flirtation by mail with each other. And she was so excited to get back to London and finally see him again, and that's at the start of the book. But he has not responded to her letters for months. He like dropped off the face of the earth. And what she doesn't know is it's because someone appears to want him dead and has been hunting him, and he doesn't want her connected to that at all, and that's why he's dropped off. But they do reconnect in London. She finds him, and the majority of the book is her insisting that she can help him and them kind of teaming up to solve this mystery and free themselves of this cloud that's hanging over what they could potentially have. So in this excerpt, she is waiting at a ball for the Bow Street runner, Harry, to arrive, and to arrive in disguise in particular. The Duke of Montague's manse was triple the width of the Weldons, yet there was a stifling atmosphere as nearly every member of the Ton squeezed onto the Duke's urban premises that evening. Allison, for her part, was wedged onto the seat of a bay window beside a pair of seasoned fledglings. They sang their songbird gossip at such speed it was a wonder they could breathe. The girl nearest her was topped with a concoction of ostrich plumes that tickled Allison in the face, with each dramatic whiff of the girl's head. Allison wriggled, trying to retake territory, but alas, her side hoops remained winged up to her elbows. Allison's ear was clipped by the edge of a wayward fan, as the girl beside her excitedly shared the story of how a baron's son bought her a cake. I have stories too, thought Allison. I have stories of carts crashing in the woods, of bad men setting fire to my lover's home, of hiding in his embrace on the rooftops, of the handsomest man you saw in your life eating me like strawberries beneath explosions in the sky. I have some stories. Allison folded her hands in her lap to keep herself from retaliating against the errant fan. The chaste posture sent familiar feelings rippling through her. Just the barest warmth and pressure of her hands resting in her lap was now all it took to stoke fires in her belly. She tightened her interlaced fingers. The impulse to let them wander was a mighty thing. If only she could conjure Harry and his magical mouth. With the mere snap of her fingers, she'd expected her counterfeit baronet to have arrived by now. Her eyes raked the room for 100th time. She laughed audibly over the thought that, only days ago, a fashionable ball had been a thrill that worked on even her most reluctant senses. No more. The air here was hot and loud, the people hollow. All she wished was to be in a serene meadow with Harry's head resting in her lap. Preferably face down, she laughed again. Perhaps she had never truly loved these functions, but merely quaked in awe before their perceived authority. Perhaps it was why her heart so often raced till she was ill. Perhaps it explained her anxieties during introductions to those like the Marchioness, those mysterious luminaries of the Ton. She had so long tied herself in knots to be deemed worthy of these places, but for the first time wondered, were they worthy of her? The epiphany elicited only a passing chuff of recognition. She flicked a speck from the rosy swag of her gown, marveling at the way the weft shone blue at some angles. At least she did not dislike the frocks. Of that she was certain. My jewel! Lady Merton had found her and was already outstretching her arms in delighted discovery. Allison smiled. Oracle! She stood to deliver a proper curtsy to Beatrice, ensuring that her bottom intruded into the orbit of the well-plumed storyteller. Such a change in you tonight, Allison. You must wear shot silk more often. I'm not certain I have seen you in aught but gold. Allison gave the Marchioness a swirl, relieved at the praise. She loved her shimmering golds and sunny yellows, but had realized of late that she more often wore them despite her mother, who seemed suddenly not to care. Tonight she stepped outside her customs, with only a hint of yellow in the buttery silk primroses pinned to her breast. Lady Merton scrunched her shoulders up in glee. You are the brightest of stars, my girl. I love how you do it. Do what? Lady Merton took a long sip of wine, assessing Allison over the brim before answering. Shine. The compliment did not embarrass Allison's cheeks with color, not this time. She threaded her hand into the great lady's proffered arm. Tell me, Oracle, any news of the future? Well, Lady Merton patted Allison's hand as they serpentined through the crowd. I foresee that Faulkner will not wed the best woman present. Your ladyship, we have discussed this. So we have, and I can tell by your wielding of ladyship that you are not to be trifled with. However, I claim my right to flatter you, even if it is by way of passive jabs at your rejection of my son. You must love him very much, for you forget he is your godson. The Marchioness inhaled sharply, and her eyes flashed large before settling into a pouty droop. I suppose I do. I love him very much, but she directed her pout into her wineglass. I propose the blunder has more to do with my being foxed. Indeed, Allison had hardly known the woman without a bit of wine in her. I marvel at you, said Allison. Oh? Tell me, how many present tonight know of your adventures to that little theater we patronized? Lady Merton blocked her lips with gloved fingers, preventing herself from losing any wine. Do not play shocked with me, said Allison. 'Tis you who brought me there. Yes, to enjoy my corruption of you, not to make you the corrupter. Allison took a more serious tone. Tell me. Lady Merton shrugged and examined the crowd. There are faces that were there that day here, faces which are always there. And surely the whispers get out to those who would never be seen in such a place. What then? Lady Merton stopped walking. What is this about? And be honest. It is all I ask as a friend. The word friend seduced the explanation from Allison like a stolen kiss. Beatrice, I am not certain I much love the Tawn and the power it controls over my life. You seem to have unlocked its secrets, living as you do by your own rules. Yet your name is never besmirched in the weekly satires. How? Allison, my dear, you were merely born too late. Illustrations of my naked, rotting body have not made the journals for 30 years. I am old. My scandals are mummified. That is all. Allison was dissatisfied, and the all-knowing oracle read it plain on her face. Lady Merton put a hand on her cheek. My scandals are many. Some I delight in, many I regret. I am true to myself purely because I cannot help it. I would not see you follow entirely in my steps. There is nothing to learn here. Lady Merton withdrew her hand, becoming oddly fiddly for the woman Allison thought she knew. She averted her eyes as she summoned her next words. Having not been blessed with children of my own by Lord Merton, I tend to gravitate toward the youth. I fawn, I meddle. That is how it is with Faulkner and yourself. She raised her eyes, shimmering with emotion. Pray do not tell your mother, but I think of you as a daughter. Allison herself had felt the same, yet the sentiment felt suddenly too large, too overwhelming to acknowledge. We have only known one another for days, Beatrice. Sometimes days is all it takes. Lady Merton put an end to the conversation by turning to snatch a fresh glass of sherry from a passing tray. A figure beyond her shoulder drew Allison's eye. It was Harry. He searched the room keenly from behind brass-rimmed spectacles. His unruly queue was slicked back more tidily than usual, but rebellious hanks were still loosening over his ears. His dun waistcoat was paired with a darker coat over top, some marriage between burgundy and brown. Allison had never seen him in such an ominous shade. Peyton had chosen well for him. She had oft teased Harry with the name of Rogue, but tonight, even from behind his bookish lenses, he fair looked the part. He'd flawlessly adopted the posture of the Tawn. Back straight, one hand at his hip, he looked ready to tip his head at various introductions, but none would be forthcoming without someone to introduce him. Allison took a step toward rescuing him, but Lady Merton turned back around at the same time, nearly dousing her in wine. Oh, I nearly ruined your gown just then. Allison heard her, but hardly turned to look. Lady Merton sucked a droplet of wine from her fingered glove, and her alarm settled. Wisely, she craned her neck to follow Allison's line of sight. Ah, is he your man? The question was packed with her usual playfulness. But then Allison saw the corners of Beatrice's lips turn starkly downward. What was it? What was wrong? Did she recognize him from the Gossingtons? I am no oracle, for I did not foresee the spectacles, she pouted. She turned her skeptical gaze on Allison. I do hope his vision is well enough to see what a beauty you are. Allison untensed. Perhaps it would be best to divert the fox marchioness before going to Harry. She was about to recommend they progress to the ballroom, but too late. Harry's eyes found her, and an unschooled, boyish smile cracked through his baronet's veneer. He got it under control and approached them. Calm and confident, radiating charm and wisdom, and the intent to be introduced. Allison swept toward him just as he closed the gap, on the chance he had not researched yet how such introductions were made among her set. Lady Merton, may I introduce Sir No, wait. The Marchioness raised her hand between them and brought them to a standstill. Do not tell me. He is your mystery guest. Her eyes flicked up and down his body, and what she saw reversed her pout. Perhaps he should remain mysterious. All for the better, for I have no name anyway. Harry's left eyebrow arched up over the rim of his glasses in a way that was positively knee-melting. His swift repartee caused an astonished hand to fly to the Marchioness's breast, all the better to draw Harry's attentions there, Allison supposed. The Marchioness offered her hand to Harry, and he took it. To anyone else in the room, his bow would appear no different from those of the best-bred men in the country, but Allison was near enough to catch the eye contact he made with Lady Merton and recognize it as anything but courtly. She was near enough to note how his thumb purposefully stroked the back of Lady Merton's glove before releasing her, near enough to be equally affected when Harry's eyes flicked briefly to hers with a sly smile. A flush of pride warmed Allison's cheeks. The man was good at his profession. Lady Merton, I understand it is to you I owe my invitation. I have neglected these circles for too long. The Marchioness batted away his gratitude with a folded fan. I am very close with the family, but his grace, heaven help him, is not the best at keeping up with the rigorous social demands of a duke. I frequently impose my services on him to rectify this. Fresh blood at parties is always a boon. Harry took a step back, and his eyes flicked up and down the Marchioness in a way that, judging by the laughter that trilled from between her smiling teeth, utterly delighted her. Graceful, sharp, fashionable, any nobleman worth his salt would be wise to have you as coordinator of his social calendar. Your charms must draw every interesting person in the country to your door. Allison would have turned away and cringed at the escalation of flattery, if not for the fact that Beatrice still basked in his attentions, uncharacteristically coquettish. You had not told me your guest was a poet, Lady Allison. Allison had, in fact, once told Beatrice exactly that. As the Marchioness cooed on about his finest qualities, Harry stole another sideways glance at Allison, the twinkle in his eye, enough to strike her dead and buried. There was something about watching him wear his ruse so deftly, about watching his talents at work, something that severed any chance at a chaste thought. She would do best to keep her mouth shut till the itch ebbed, lest she cried, "Touch me," at a crowded ball.